On today's show, the Hawks sweep a back-to-back against the Knicks and Cavs on Tuesday and Wednesday, but on the less fortunate side, Jalen Johnson leaves the game with an ankle sprain. We'll get into all of what transpired in this game, the big picture, the context, and much more, and all of that is on the way.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1669 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday evening into Thursday here in early March. And today's show is brought to you by the folks at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Also, I want to encourage you at the top of the podcast to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. And please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, places like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as YouTube on the video side. It's been a very busy week for the podcast. We did a two-part episode on Monday with Glenn Willis, good friend of the podcast, and also a episode last night after the Hawks won on Tuesday. And speaking of which, the Hawks were aiming tonight for back-to-back wins after basically an injury-riddled, weird game on Tuesday. And without spoiling it all, this is kind of a very symmetrical win for the Hawks, but they ended up getting the 112-101 victory over the Cavs at home on this Wednesday. Eerily similar in a lot of ways, a back-to-back with travel for both teams in this game, but lots of injuries. Of course, Trae Young remains out for Atlanta along with Onyeka Okongwu, and also Kobe Buffkin missed this game. And then later on, Jalen Johnson left this game, unfortunately, for the Hawks with an ankle sprain. On the Cavs side, they're without Donovan Mitchell, their best player, also Evan Mobley, also Max Strus. So similarly to Tuesday, it was kind of the walking wounded on both sides. I'll come back to it later on, but the parallels between these two games, and both were wins for the Hawks. Obviously, that's the bright spot. If you were a Hawks fan, that's all you seem to care about, and I totally understand that. But as far as the nuance is concerned, it wasn't exactly the same game, but it was crazy how similar the two games kind of unfolded. Essentially, the Hawks built a big lead in both of them. They led by a larger margin in the second half of both games. Then they gave the entire lead away by the end of the third quarter in both games. And then the opponent simply could not make shots in the fourth quarter. So the Hawks were able to kind of stabilize, pull away, and then also were resilient enough, to their credit, to kick it back into high gear and win relatively comfortably down the stretch. So as far as the parallels are concerned, Tuesday, the Hawks led by as many as 22 points. Tonight, on this Wednesday, they were up by 21 points against the Cavs. So pretty much the exact same number. On Tuesday, the Knicks shot 8 of 27 from the field in the fourth quarter and basically couldn't get anything to fall. On Wednesday, the Cavs were 6 of 22 from the floor and 0 of 11 from 3 in the fourth quarter on the way to 12 points. So pretty similar stuff there. Something to be said for bad three-point shooting the entire game on both sides. But in the end, the Hawks followed the same blueprint. And look, it wasn't fun necessarily if you were a Hawks fan. I got a lot of angsty replies and messages and stuff like that during the second half of this game because the Hawks were kind of letting one get away, it seemed like. But the second straight night, they kind of were able to pull it all together when it mattered and escape with a nice victory on the broad side of things. So again, injury-wise, lots of stuff to get to here. Trae Onyeka already out. Kobe was actually in a walking boot of some kind tonight. No further update there, but we'll kind of see what his big toe is going to be coming up with in the next couple of days. DeAndre Hunter ended up playing. He was listed as probable. They called Vit Krejci up from the College Park team in this before the game started. He actually played in this one. And then we'll talk about Jalen Johnson in a second when he left this game as well. But after all of that sort of setup, the Hawks were favored in this game. I got a lot of questions about that too. Yes, the Cavs had a 13-game lead on the Hawks in the standings coming into tonight. And that seems insane that the Hawks would be favored in the game. But obviously it was in Atlanta, and crucially, you could even argue that coming into the game, the Cavs were actually the less healthy team. Once Jalen went out, I would argue it was probably the Hawks that had the bigger injury issues, but Cleveland was missing 3 starters. The Hawks were only missing 1.5, basically, Trae and Onyeka in this game. But anyway, the Hawks were favored by 3 points, ended up covering that spread, and they've been a little bit better against the spread in recent days. But let's just talk about the takeaways from this game first off, and then we'll talk about Jalen in a second. Defensively, another good performance from the Hawks, at least on the statistical side in this game. A 104 defensive rating by the end. I have to say, and this is one of the reasons why people get mad at me sometimes, and I get all that, but it's also what you're hopefully signing up for is the big picture and the full picture. I'm not going to pull punches on this podcast. I kind of tell you what I see, what the numbers say, etc. The Hawks were a bit fortunate in this game. Cleveland was 10 of 44 from three, including the aforementioned 0 of 11 from three in the fourth quarter. Now, will the Hawks have won the game anyway? Maybe, but the Cavs certainly missed more shots than you would estimate that they would have based on their shot quality. And yes, there's honestly, it's important to realize that not every shot is created equal. I'm not telling you that every team is going to make this amount of shots, whatever. The shot quality matters. I talk about shot quality a lot on the podcast. I will do it again tonight, I'm sure. The Cavs did take some bad shots. So I don't think that they would have shot their normal percentage on this level of attempts often, but they also missed a bunch of shots, especially from good shooters. So 10 of 44 is bad enough, but they were also 4 of 36 from what I would argue were their top 3 available shooters in this game. Darius Garland, Sam Merrill, and Dean Wade. I know Darius Garland is obviously a big name. Sam Merrill and Dean Wade are not prominent names, but they're both high-end shooters, in particular Merrill. Merrill this year, I would argue, has been a top 10 shooter in the entire league. He's been a high-volume, high-percentage, dynamic shooter. Wade, 40% from three this year on pretty decent volume, and then Garland is a really good shooter as well. And they were 4 of 36 combined in the game. So some of that is to the Hawks' credit. So you don't want to take anything away from the Hawks. I never would. They did a good job defensively in this game. It wasn't quite as good as the numbers indicate, I don't think, but certainly a bit of good luck. And also, a back-to-back on both sides. You would expect that both teams who had similar situations in this game, because the Hawks had to come back from New York, Cleveland had to come back after a nice win last night, actually. They both had tired legs, I'm sure, in this game. The Hawks didn't shoot incredibly well from three either. They were probably league average in this game from three. But yeah, some of that is good defense, some of that's good luck. And in the end, I would say, and Quinn kind of alluded to this too, he was a little bit more coy than I would be about this. The Hawks are probably due for some good luck. I've noted throughout the season that if all things are equal, I think the Hawks have been a little bit unlucky this year, both with how their injuries have happened and when they've happened, and also shot quality. And, there's a reason in the betting market they've been so bad this year as far as against the spread. And I know that not everybody cares about that, but it's a good indicator of a team kind of underperforming and maybe getting a little bit unlucky, etc. All that said, there was some positive regression in this game, or so to speak. So anyway, that was one area. But the Hawks did force 15 turnovers in this game. That's a good number. And they also led directly to 25 points. So the Hawks did a good job of not only forcing the giveaways from Cleveland, but taking advantage of them when they actually came through. They didn't rebound the ball very well. I thought it was a poor rebounding game on the whole for Atlanta. And that showed up in the stat sheet also in this game. But it wasn't totally dire. And they also kept the Cavs off the free throw line, which is very helpful. I would say similarly, again, to Tuesday's game against the Knicks, with Donovan Mitchell out, Evan Mobley out, etc., they didn't have a lot going to the rim. Jared Allen is certainly dynamic around the rim. They had a couple of nice moments from Karis LeVert at times, but they weren't necessarily who was also pressing most of the time. I thought Craig Porter Jr. was actually the best creator in this game for Cleveland. But regardless, the Hawks did a good job kind of walling off the paint, making them beat them from the perimeter, and Cleveland could not do so. So on the whole, a good defensive performance. It wasn't dominant like the numbers might indicate, and some of that's the poor shooting, but they've been doing enough defensively. And once they lost Jalen, credit to the Hawks for, the first stretch without Jalen was probably the worst stretch of the game in a lot of ways, but once they kind of firmed things up, they were playing a lot of Bay and Hunter together in the fourth quarter. That made sense. That's what I thought to do a lot. Jalen's going to be out for a while. But, regardless, that's where things stack up right now. And they did a good job defensively on the game on the whole, as they did on Tuesday against New York. On offense, it was quite good in the first half and not good in the second half. That's kind of very broad on purpose. It did make shots in the fourth quarter when they kind of needed to in this game. We'll talk about that more later on in the podcast. But they kind of made a couple of clutch jumpers from Bogey and Bay in the fourth quarter to kind of put the game away, I would say. They shot them well, though, in the game on the whole. 51% from the field and 37% from three in the game. You can't really ask for much better than that. That's above league average. They did a pretty good job there. And they took care of the ball as well. But they had 8 turnovers in the second half, which kind of contributed to the downturn after halftime. And on the glass, they actually did nothing, which is weird because you would think that this would be a good matchup for that without Mobley, etc. The Hawks only had 8 offensive rebounds and a pretty low percentage of those shots around the rim. But they got 46 points combined from Bay and Bogey at a very good time. Those guys have not been playing all that well, especially Bogey. He's been struggling badly recently, but they kind of made shots when they kind of had to. Murray was not his best self, but they kind of made up for that. Jalen not being there. But everybody else basically shot. In fact, I'm looking at it now. Everyone on the roster, except for Murray, shot 50% or better from the field. So that's a pretty good team effort offensively. And it got stagnant at times for sure. You could feel the sort of the absences at times. Trey, Jalen, Onyeka, all those guys were felt, but they got it done in the end. So that's kind of where we are as far as the performance is concerned. After a break, we'll talk about Jalen Johnson in some depth and also go into some of the observations from this contest and the back and forth. But broadly speaking, a nice win for the Hawks. They improved to 16-16 at home this year, which is not very good, but certainly better than it's been on the road. And keeping in step and kind of staying in control of the 10 seed race. Again, not totally sexy, I understand that, but they got a nice win here and a nice way to kind of, I don't know if it erases the 2 losses in Brooklyn, but to go out and get, kind of go 2-2 against the Nets twice, Knicks, and Cavs would have felt fine, honestly. The 0-2 in Brooklyn did not feel fine, but 2-2 before those 4-game stretch would have been very acceptable in my opinion, and they went out and did that. So in the end, can't complain too much about all of that run. So anyway, we'll have more on this game, Jalen Johnson, player stuff, and much also sound from Quinn Snyder later on the podcast. But first, a word from our sponsors on the podcast today. Today's show is brought to you by Nissan USA. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little bit further when you are behind the wheel? Do you ever wonder what adventures happen to be right around the next corner when you're driving? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level when you are behind that wheel. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and also for great escapes. It has a class-exclusive Google built-in that is your always updating assistant calling for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone because Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system with the Nissan Rogue. And the 2024 Rogue is perfect mid-size crossover for your next big adventure. And also that incredible lineup at Nissan also includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. Pathfinder sits up to 8 people and has expansive cargo capacity and along with advanced available 4x4 capability. And the Pathfinder also has 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds of towing. And when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is going to be there to answer that call. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure right now. Shop nissanusa.com. One more time, that is nissanusa.com. All right, and given the importance of Jalen Johnson, I want to get this in the early part of the podcast. Talk about this now instead of holding it for later. Jalen came down on his right ankle about a minute into the second half of this game. It was immediately clear, happened right in front of where I was. He was in some serious pain. He was rolling around in the backcourt. Play was stopped shortly after that. He had to be helped to the locker room straight away. And pretty quickly, the Hawks ruled him out for the game. Not a huge surprise given that kind of, he was obviously in pain. As of right now, the only official update from the Hawks was when they ruled him out, they called it a right ankle sprain. So kind of, if you saw the mechanism, if you watched the replay back, it was pretty obviously the ankle. It looked bad, I have to say, but Jalen, that's kind of all we know right now is ankle sprain. Now, ankle sprains have a wide range. The example I always use on the negative side is if you are a longtime Hawks follower, you might remember that Mike Muscala once missed like 4 months with an ankle sprain. That's only one example. That's like grade 2, grade 3 ankle sprain. There's grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. I'm not a doctor. I've done some research on this stuff in the past, but it could be a day or two. If it's a great scenario, it could be a couple weeks, could be longer than that. We kind of really don't know. I actually asked Quinn Snyder post-game, and he kind of gave me the no update. The Hawks will release something, I'm sure, at some point. They don't play again until Friday, and they're going to have Thursday off because they had the back-to-back. So they might still release something on Thursday. We will see. But for now, you're kind of holding your breath because, it's an ankle sprain. You kind of just know that it is something, but you don't know how severe it is until you get imaging or whatever the Hawks are going to do on that. So unsatisfying for sure, but he left the game, didn't return, and that's where we are right now. People ask me this question, so I'll just answer it now. Basically, what happens if he misses time? It's not great because the Hawks are already shorthanded right now. Of course, Trey is out for a little while longer, at least. Same with the Kongu. And then, front court depth, front court size, all those things have been questions. Jalen's been kind of the Swiss Army knife because Jalen is the tallest, longest, biggest athlete they have sort of that's not a center on this team. And he unlocks a lot of different things. He's been a small ball center option with the Kongu out, etc. Obviously, they would like to play Bay and Hunter for the 4 minutes, basically, if Johnson is unavailable, as they did tonight. Dylan Windler, who they just signed, could play a little bit of small ball 4. Not ideal, but he certainly could do it. Wes Matthews has played a little bit of 4 in the past. He's very small, but he's at least wily, but not a ton of minutes there as an older guy. Mo Gay, people ask me about that as well. If he's physically cleared, I'm not sure he is because he's played twice in College Park. He missed 2 games in between those 2 games, and then he played only 11 minutes in the first half on Tuesday, then didn't play anymore. So I'm not sure how available Mo Gay is physically to play in Atlanta right now. So if they had a Kongwu, they could play him at the 4. They don't have him either. So really right now, without Trey, without Onyeka, the 2 guys they kind of can't replace are Murray and Johnson. And they already lost Johnson for right now. So TBD, but not a great situation if he has to miss any length of time. We'll come back to that if we need to, starting with Friday's game in Memphis. As for the game itself, both teams were red hot to start this game. The Cavs were 5-8 from the floor. The Hawks were 7-8 from the floor at the beginning of the game. Bogey made his first 2 shots, as did Capella. Murray had a nice steal and dunk in transition. Rotationally, no surprises until Jalen went out, but it was the exact same thing. Garrison Matthews, Hunter, Bruno Fernando, and then Trent Forrest as the backup point guard because Bufkin was again out in this contest. It was a close quarter. Both teams were within 4 points of each other the entire first quarter. The Hawks were shooting the ball well. It was kind of staying in that range for a while. Then the Hawks had the first big run of the game mid-second quarter, a 22-5 run to go up by 18 points. Hunter had a hot start. He had 14 points in the middle of the second quarter. Big part of that run. Murray had a nice couple of plays around the rim. Bruno had a nice dunk. The Cavs had a technical foul, and then they got a 5-second violation, so they kind of melted down a little bit too. I noted this, but not to pick on Garrison Matthews, but he only took 1 shot in the game, and it came in the second half. At halftime, Garrison Matthews had taken 2 shots in 36 minutes of play, dating back 3 or 4 games. That's a very, very, very low number, alas. But the Hawks shot by 15 at halftime, and they were in total control, it seemed like. They shot 69% from 2-point range in the first half, 15 assists, 3 turnovers. Obviously, they were in control, but until they actually weren't. So, first, Jalen goes down, which I talked about earlier. The Hawks actually put Vit Krejci in for Jalen, which people were like, what's going on here? Coaches will often do that when you get an injury or a foul trouble in the first minute of a half. In order to not kind of throw their entire rotation out the window, they will go to someone deeper on the bench, and Vit was available in this game. He only played, I think it was a couple minutes in a row, and then came out of the game, never came back in. But and by the way, he hadn't played since Valentine's Day. Only his second appearance in the NBA this year, but he did the job for 3 minutes. It wasn't right away. I will say, and maybe I saw people throw this around, the Hawks blowing the lead did not happen as soon as Jalen left the game. It happened after that, and it happened maybe because of that on some level, but it was 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes later before the Hawks actually started to melt down. And then they did melt down, I have to say. A 23-6 run by the Cavs quickly, from the Hawks being up by 21 to only up by 4 in a very, very quick period of time. It might have been worse. Isaac Okoro, local product, had kind of a Ben Simmons situation where he had a pretty apparent open dunk. John Hollinger and I both mentioned that on Twitter. It was a weirdly bad play. But even then, it slowed down a little bit, but it wasn't over. The Cavs scored 37 points in the final 9 minutes of the third quarter. So as much as I talked about the defensive numbers being good in this game, the third quarter got away from them in a lot of ways. Cleveland had 12 assists in the third. Again, 37 points in 9 minutes, nothing to fool around with, but in the end, it didn't bite them, and the Hawks were down by 2 at the end of the third quarter, despite being up 21 in the same quarter. So that's the big-time implosion. I have to give a shout-out to my former Michigan guy, Karis LeVert, who I do love. He was very bad in this game for Cleveland for a lot of time, especially in the second half. He kind of actively submarined their offense late in the third, early in the fourth, and then Sam Merrill, who I've talked about before, just couldn't make a shot. Sam Merrill was 0 of 9 for 3 in this game, 18 minutes. That hurts them. But after the red-hot third quarter, the Cavs came out in the fourth quarter by missing 12 of their first 14 shots, and they scored 4 points in about 7.5 minutes. And that was the game in a lot of ways, at least in retrospect. So Bucks actually didn't put the game away because their offense was not great in the fourth quarter, but they still were able to make a little bit of gain because Cleveland just couldn't score. There was one swing against Atlanta on a challenge that was a good challenge by Cleveland. Quinn then called timeout up by 5, though, and they allowed back-to-back buckets to George Niang against Murray on switches, where he just got Murray all the way under the rim, flipped it up, scored, and it was like, all right, it's gonna be a close game. And then after that, Bogey made back-to-back shots, and then Bay hit a 3 to go up by 7 with 2 minutes to go, and it really helped to kind of make some jump shots, honestly, some not super tough shots, but certainly ones that are not guaranteed to be going in. And then the dagger was actually a Clint Capella backdoor kind of semi-lob to Sadiq Bey for a layup that kind of put the game away. That was a shocking play, I'll say, but it worked out well for the Hawks. They went up by 9 at that point in time, and that was kind of be the end of the game, to be honest with you. But I mentioned the fourth quarter earlier, but I'll say it again specifically about the shooting numbers. The Cavs being 0 of 11 from 3 in the fourth was pretty huge, especially in contrast to the Hawks making some shots down the stretch. And then the gap. Cleveland scored 40 points in the third quarter and 12 in the fourth quarter. You don't often see that kind of gap in the same half by the same team, but it happened. And that was, all that formula led to the Hawks getting the win, despite, again, a pretty subpar offensive half for Atlanta after halftime. But they were able to hold on because of the back and forth nature of this game. And in the end, a nice win. So, player we'll get to on the podcast, and as far as the player evaluation stuff on the show, also some sound from Quinn Snyder talking about DeAndre Hunter from tonight after the game. We'll get into all of that and much more, but first, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their best price guarantee. Game Time is taking the guesswork out of buying tickets everywhere right now. It's also the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And they are obsessed with finding ways to save you money on tickets. They have zone deals for an average savings of 18%. And at Game Time, the seats that in the venue that you're looking for, you can actually view those seats from where you actually would be in the venue. Helps you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at that venue. The all-in pricing is huge as well. You know, your totals up front without any of the hidden fees some other places might happen to have. And you have peace of mind with Game Time. The Game Time guarantee means that you'll have always the best price possible with Game Time. Take all the guesswork out of buying tickets right now by using the Game Time app. Download the app right now at Game Time, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Terms apply. Again, create that account at Game Time app. Redeem the code Locked On for $20 off. That promo code is Locked On for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, into the player evaluation stuff in this contest. I mentioned before, like everybody shot the ball well, other than Murray, and that's not the entire game, but certainly was very full off the bench. Beat Krejci 3 minutes, didn't make any stat other than a foul, but I thought he did his job in a small stint. It was kind of a weird situation, but he was thrown out there, did fine. Trent Forrest, 14 minutes, 3 of 4 from the floor, 3 rebounds, an assist, no turnovers, +3. Back-to-back nights, Trent was rock solid. The Hawks won the minutes both times with DeJounte off the floor. That was huge. And Trent's not flashy, but he certainly did the job on both nights and also played good defense, crucially as he always does. Garrison Matthews only took 1 shot, but he made it. Had 1 rebound, played 17 minutes. He's got to shoot more. I will stand on that. It's not all about that, but with his appeal as a shooter, I think he needs to hunt his shot a little bit more, but I thought he was fine. Bruno had a weird one. 7 points, 10 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block. Very solid, right? He also had a couple of pretty bad breakdowns. I think Bruno plays 100 miles an hour sometimes and gets a little bit overzealous. So highs and lows. Better in the first half than the second half for sure for Bruno, but he was okay on the whole. DeAndre Hunter, who I talked about before, but I'll say this now as the last guy on the bench. It's 17 points in this one, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. He's been red hot recently. He in the last 12 games, he's 27 of 56 from 3, which is like 49% or so. Not just that either. He's playing with aggression from 2. He's attacking the rim, playing assertively. He's not played more than 29 minutes since returning from injury. Also, this is the first back-to-back that he's played in since the return from the knee injury. And Quinn said, kind of unprompted tonight, that he's still on a restriction of minutes. Now, I've talked about that a little bit. I speculated that with Glenn Willis earlier this week. It was pretty obvious on some level because the Hawks are not having him play as many minutes. But for Quinn to say that, it's notable that they're trying to at least manage him a little bit. But he's been playing really well. And I wanted to play some audio from Quinn from tonight. Actually, my friend Kevin Chenard of Hawks.com asked a question of Quinn, which you'll hear on this clip. And you'll hear Quinn talk about Hunter and the way he's been playing, because this might be his best stretch of his career over the last 12 games or so. So here's Quinn talking about DeAndre Hunter and his progression.
It seems like we're pretty deep into the longest, most confident stretch of DeAndre Hunter's career. In your eyes, looking back at the last 2 months or the time since you've been here, what is it that is enabling him to get into this good stretch of basketball?
Well, I mean, he's so solid defensively. We've been challenging him with different matchups. He's worked hard, not just to get healthy, but to stay in shape and to stay sharp. And I think he's letting the game come to him. Beginning with just taking his 3. He's 6'8", so when he rises up, And there isn't really a contested shot for him from there because he's able to, to elevate on his jump shot. And I also think he's attacking the rim, and if he can't get all the way there, that's when he's able to pull up. But I think his mindset, being aggressive, shooting the ball, and then also being aggressive when he's attacking the closeout and getting to the rim. I thought there were a couple times tonight he might have had an and one, but those are things he can do, and it's good to see him doing it. He's playing with a lot of confidence. I really believe in him, and I've told him that, and just want him to play free, and enjoy the game, and embrace it. And that's what I see. Just his mindset is in a really good place.
So there you have it. Obviously, you want to oversell it. It's still a small sample size, but DeAndre is playing well, and it's been huge for the Hawks in his current role. As for the rest of the takeaways here, Jalen was playing well before he left. 7 points, 4 rebounds in 19 minutes. Obviously holding her breath about the injury, but knock on wood on that one. Saddiq Bey, 41 minutes. Part of that was because Jalen was unavailable in the second half. But 23 points, 8 rebounds, a steal and a block for Saddiq. Shot the ball well in this one, 5-7 from 2. 3 of 7 from 3, got the line 6 times. He was good in this game. Defensively, not always the absolute best, but he's certainly gotten better and better as the season's gone along defensively, I think. And I thought it was an important game for Saddiq. And honestly, if Jalen misses time, Bey might lead the team in minutes. He's going to play a lot because especially if Hunter is still limited as he has been, Bey is going to be playing as much as he can possibly handle as long as Jalen is out. And knock on wood on that as well. Clint Capella was pretty solid, I thought, this game. 8 rebounds, 3 assists for Clint. 4 of 6 from the field, 3 fouls. Just did his job, was rock solid. Didn't do anything terribly wrong or terribly impressive either, but was just a solid performer in 23 minutes. Bogey broke out of a slump, which was nice. Bogey, in 3 previous games, shot 28% from the field. So that's a bad stretch for him. Obviously, he's been dealing with some issues with his right hand on some level, but he shot the ball well in this one. He was 5 of 7 on 2s and 3 of 8 from 3, 4 of 4 at the free throw line, 23 points, 6 assists, and just played well. Nice to see him bounce back. He's never going to be as bad as he was for those 3 games for very long, but he was important in this one. And then DeJounte didn't shoot it well. 18 points on 6-14 from 2, but only 1-7 from 3 in this game. They had 9 assists. Didn't play his best, but it's still taking up a lot of usage. I get all that. I got some people that were getting pretty mad at DeJounte individually in the second half in my mentions. If the Hawks had lost this game, he would have gotten some blame, I'm sure. But in the win, a little bit less heat, of course. And he's allowed to not make some shots every once in a while. So there you go on that. It was not his best performance, I didn't think, but in the end, they won the game. So you leave it there for now. So yeah, from here, the Hawks have a day off Thursday because they had a back-to-back, of course. Then they will go to Memphis for a road game on Friday before returning to Atlanta for a home game on Sunday against New Orleans. That is the only home game the Hawks will have in the next 16 days because after that, they go west for 5 games. So a lot of busyness on the road right now for the Hawks. A home game tonight, home game Sunday, and then not one for quite a while after that. While you are here, please subscribe to this podcast. And if you do on the audio only feeds, you will get some bonus content from the hosts of the Locked On Sports Atlanta postcast. You'll see those. They'll be labeled as postcasts in the audio only feeds. They have their own YouTube feed, but if you want to listen to that, it'll be in our audio only feeds. And nothing else from me, by the way, is still the same churn of me being here every day, basically, but just some more Hawks coverage for you delivered to your feed on the audio side. Again, please subscribe to the podcast. Ratings, reviews, likes appreciated on all those platforms: Apple, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Postcast, all those places. Amazon Music. We're also on YouTube. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there as well at BT Rowland. I write about the Hawks on a regular basis at patreon.com/BT Rowland. If you want to have some extra stuff from me, that's the place to find it on the Hawks. I do appreciate everybody listening to the podcast. Do me a favor and find someone in your life that follows the Hawks in some fashion and hand the podcast to them in some way, whether it's on an audio platform or on YouTube. Send them a link, etc. I would appreciate the support to help us spread the word about the podcast as we're diving in, averaging like 200 plus episodes a year. Like, it's been very, very busy. I do appreciate all of the support, but it certainly helps to grow the audience. So hopefully you'll be able to help us out with that as well. And all that said, a busy week is still going to be continuing. I'll have a show after the game on Friday, and if something crazy happens between now and then, we might jump in with a bonus episode, but at the very latest, I'll be back on Friday night, and until then, we'll see you all next time.